3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, listeners, lovers, and friends, welcome back to episode 24 of the ProdCast from Two Ticks and the Dog Productions. I am your host, Jim Fogarty. Back with us today, above Dave Grohl Alley, is the one and only Brandon Giovanni from MDI Studios. What's up, man?
Well, This is the episode, man. This is the good one.
This is really the one we've been kind of waiting for.
Yeah. Personal reasons and exposure reasons for everything.
Let's be honest. You're really into the exposure reasons. I know your motivations.
It doesn't make you a bad guy.
No. That really doesn't. There's nothing wrong with the little self-promotion. Speaking of promotion and speaking of being electrified.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to work in Brandon's call phrase there. I'm sitting here drinking a little bit of Axio that is getting me excited. I'm already excited for the guest, but it's getting me excited and it's keeping me focused, which actually ties into the guest. Because I know that he is into, maybe not the term biohacking or nutrigenomics, but he's a health guy and he's a mind guy. And things like niacin and B6 and B12 and green tea extract and Monterey pine extract and L-theanine. These are all things that help us focus and help us stay in the moment. And these are all things that are found in Axio, which is what I'm drinking right now. And these are all things that can be found at biohacktomorrow.com, including supplements and synergizers, some of which reduce your oxidative stress by 40% in the first 30 days.
Jeez.
Yeah, right?
That's what's up.
Yeah, that's what's up, right? That's
really
what's up, man. And our guest today looks like he's been biohacking and has reduced his oxidative stress. I commented as soon as I seen him, as soon as he walked in, as soon as I seen him, as soon as I saw him, like, man, he looks really fit. He says he's in game shape, and I hope he's in game shape, because today, our guest on the 24th episode of the ProdCast is Congressman of the United States in the 13th District, Mr. Tim Ryan. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Fogarty. Appreciate being here with you above Dave Grohl Alley. How cool.
And really kind of like above your, we're the next building over, but above your congressional office.
Right.
Here in downtown Warren on the historic square. Listen, for people who are out there that don't know who Tim Ryan is, you probably haven't been paying attention. But I'm going to give him a quick bio faster than he will. He's the Ohio 13th District Congressman. That district encompasses 5 counties that include Akron, Kent, Youngstown, Warren, and as far south as Alliance and Deerfield, Ohio. Covers a wide swath of constituents here in Ohio. Has an air base, has an arsenal, has several universities, farmers, manufacturers, people of all walks of life. So he represents a huge portion, a huge swath, as I've said, of many different constituents from all walks of life. And I'm sure it is not an easy job, Congressman Ryan. And he's taken on the challenge even more so in recent months when he announced that he is seeking the Democratic nominee for president of the United States. How's that been going, man? That's what everybody wants to know.
That was the easy part.
It's both exhilarating and exhausting and inspiring and heartbreaking. It's the full catastrophe of life.
I like how you put it in full catastrophe mode. Why use that terminology?
Well, life, life is tough, and as I said, like the full range, the full catastrophe. It's like, it's beautiful. I mean, I was in Dayton last week for a few days, and you just see how absolutely gut-wrenching life is for some people, and you try to be there with them, and then at the same time you see the beauty that comes out of that sometimes in the community of Dayton, where the pride and the connection came out. That's what emerges in those moments. And so, that's America. And do you want to lean a little bit more towards the inspiration and joy and happiness, and that's where the focus needs to be? Or is the focus going to be on division, shaming, kind of what we're experiencing now? And so I'm trying to tilt it a little bit to the more optimistic
unity.
points.
Tim's campaign from the very beginning one of the first things he said is, I want to make this campaign about unity. And that's a really broad idea. And it's so divisive in the world today. The big question is, how do we unify in a world that seems, quite frankly, that we're pitted against each other in every sense of the word, where you can't even, like the totality of you agree with somebody or you don't, and if you don't, you're this, and if you do, you're that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We're not made like that.
No, it's not. It's really not. I mean, we evolved as a species the last 70,000 years. I mean, you look at our brain functions in the prefrontal cortex. It's meant for communicating. It's meant for connection. It's meant for using our collective actions. I mean, look at us as a species. How are we here? We're not the fastest. We're not the strongest. But we communicated. We learned. We developed ways of communicating with each other. We developed language. We used our brain to develop really sharp objects that could kill bigger animals than us. And so the whole thing is about connection. And if you look at what I've been trying to talk a lot about is when you look into the early documents of our country, you look into the preamble of the Constitution, you have words and phrases like to form a more perfect union, the common defense, the common good, the general welfare. The whole document was about us unifying against the king who we were trying to break from. And how do you unify the people against the economic and political concentration? That's what we got to get back to, because everything is pushing in the other direction now. I mean, you think about media, you think about social media, you think about politics.
Right.
Everything is about fractured team, micro-targeting.
Right.
Like you can go in any aspect of society, and it's about, let me find this little niche, let me pit that niche against that niche, and I'll make money off of it.
Right.
So the economic system, the political system, it's all about, but we are at such a level of discomfort now that I think there's room for unity, because it just doesn't feel good.
Or we're discomfort and discontent. The people have never been more discontent with public office holders, and not even on the national level, even on the local levels as well.
And what's really crazy, like with that social media, like you were saying, is especially when it gets here closer to 2020 election, Facebook and social media was meant to bring people together, to connect and everything. And I would say 70% of it is people attacking each other on social media with different ideas and things of that nature.
Well, especially when it comes to politics.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not a conversation. It's not a conversation.
It's direct.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned the Constitution, though, and you mentioned the king in that document. And first off, Brandon and I were talking ahead of time, and I think everybody out there feels this way, that we don't, the Constitution was written by men. It's not this, I think some people look at it as it's this holy document, this thing that can't be changed or it's just so written. Especially, you mentioned Dayton, and then people talk about the Second Amendment rights, and we can talk about that. But that Constitution was written when there was a common enemy. Who is our common enemy now? And maybe it's not a who, maybe it's a what. What do you think that is?
Well, it's probably the issues we would all see as, I'm just thinking of President Kennedy's speech, the common enemies of man, tyranny, poverty, disease, the basics. And right now, to me, it's income inequality. To me, it's a lot of the social justice issues should be common enemies for all of us. We're three white guys here. We get pulled over by a cop, it's a whole different ballgame than if you're a black kid that gets pulled over by a cop. And that is statistically verifiable.
Sure.
It's like we're not making this up. And so
be careful. You're talking about science, and some people don't believe in science anymore.
I know it's tough. But climate. Talk about China. The issue of climate. A huge issue that we've got to figure out. And the fact that you look at what the smart people call deaths of despair, addiction, suicide, accidents, general recklessness, where you've given up hope. And I think you see the opiate addiction. You see the suicide rates. I just saw another New York City cop took his life. The suicides among teens now is on the rise. So let's just all take a step back and go, what the fuck is going on?
Take a break.
Like, can we stop and look around and say our kids are killing themselves, right? Our kids are on medication. There's a drug epidemic. The economy sucks for the vast majority of people in the country. Like, people can't get health care, and like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing right now? And I think that is what the national conversation needs to be. It's like everybody, put their guns down, as a
metaphorically,
right? As a metaphor, put your guns down, put your weapons down, take a deep breath. We all want the same thing. We all want what's best for our kids. We all want a better future for our kids. We all want this to stop. I don't enjoy death threats and, people hating on each other. Like, time out.
We need a halftime.
Absolutely.
It's like, it's not even 20 second. Like, you need the full 2 minute time out. Right. And let's have a conversation. And my fear with Trump is that he has zero interest in doing that. And you're the most powerful guy in the world, and you're the guy starting all the fights. Like, what do we do then? People say, well, you're talking about bringing people together, and then you go after Trump. And the only example I could really come up with is like the kids on the playground all want to get along, but there's a bully on the playground. Somebody got to knock the bully out so that everybody could come together.
Okay, but that's a good. I love that you brought this up. That's a good. Just because we can, doesn't always mean we should, though, right? Like, everybody who disagrees, and he's so I was trying not to really focus on Trump, and I want to focus on you, but I will. Let's indulge for a second, because I know we all kind of have, just because I think people feel like this guy really needs to get it. But oftentimes when there's a bully or someone acting crazy, if we can just get that person away from the group where he feels like he has to defend himself and he has to meet aggression with aggression, if we can get that person away and just say, hey, man, I know that, now, is he capable of, responding to that, understanding that sometimes you meet aggression with compassion or with some kind of it's hard to be understanding of a guy who says the things, who legislates by tweets, who just is not, I just was watching this thing today, and he was feeding into this conspiracy theory because of the Epstein who recently, hung himself, and he's validating somebody that's out there who's a conspiracy theorist, goes, well, he's very well respected because he has 500 followers or 500,000 followers or whatever. To Brandon's point about social media, about how it's kind of changed the game. I don't know. Does he need, you need to stand up to the bully for sure, but is it a way where we meet force with force, or is it a way where it's like we have to kind of?
No, it's jujitsu.
It's my man. Yeah,
it's
right.
Jujitsu. It's not. We're not going to headbutt each other.
Yeah.
It's not going to. It can't be. But you look through to me, and this is what I've said. Look, he promised he was going to take care of the economy for the working class people. He hasn't done it. So regardless of how you feel about the guy, General Motors closed down. And there's nothing. I'm not saying General Motors wouldn't have closed down no matter what. But what's your plan to help replace it in communities like ours?
Cool.
Where are the electric vehicles? Where's the this? Where's the that?
Where's the future stuff?
Where's the future? Where's the future? These industries are growing at 30% a year. Wind, solar, artificial intelligence, additive manufacturing. Electric vehicles, they're growing at 25, 30% a year. You're the president of the United States, and you're tweeting about Epstein,
right?
Like, get focus. Like, you look at what China's doing.
Get some Axio and focus,
dude.
man.
Like, you got to send a crate of this shit to his office. I'll pay for the shipping. Yeah, like,
Get the focus.
Yeah, get some oxygen going. But you look at what China's doing. You look at $1 trillion a year deficits in the United States. China's cleaning our clock with solar. They control 60% of that market. Electric vehicles, they control 50 to 60% of that market. So they're running circles around us in 5G. You're the president. Like, I don't want you screwing around on Twitter.
Act like it.
What's
Act
the
like
plan,
you've been there
bro?
before.
What's the
Right.
plan,
Yeah.
bro?
Yeah,
Come
what's
on.
the play? Can you send the play in already?
Send the play in. Have a strategy. You know, his whole goal is to win the 24-hour news cycle, and his whole goal is division. Like, you see, he just continues to put things out on immigration because he knows that the left wing is going to go nuts. And so all of a sudden, now we're going to have a whole fight. And guess what we're not talking about? We're not talking about Dayton. We're not talking about El Paso. The subject has changed. He's going to get in a fight with the Fed. He's going to get in a fight with this group or that group. Just he's like a boxer in the 15th round of a 30-year career. He just doesn't know anything but to just throw
Swing
these
away.
haymakers
Right.
and just like, he doesn't care who he hits.
Yeah.
You know, but enough about him.
Well, that's good. I was just going to change them gears and say, because you brought up China, and I think sometimes we look at who is that common enemy? Who's our common enemy? But we have to think globally, right? Act locally, think globally, the purpose. But I like that it's like, we can still be in competition with these guys with the overall purpose of the world should be the same things that you talked about and how to unify, right? Like the stuff we all can agree on: clean water, clean food, clean energy. It's interesting that we've divided it in a sense where we're painting everyone with the same brush, though. Like, I know that you, Brandon, and I were talking about it, before.
And absolutely. Like, Tim, why if I agree with someone's political policy on one issue, am I lumped into everything else that others believe about them? And you were talking about, like, the border wall.
Brought up the wall, yeah.
Bringing the wall up. And I know you believe that our border with Mexico does need attention, whether it's technology, fencing, whatever it may be. But to me, I do believe that a wall is the first step to anything you are wanting to protect. And more importantly, create the proper entranceways. So, like, a perfect example, any sporting stadium around the world, they all have some sort of fence or some sort of wall that keeps the people that shouldn't be there from going in, but more importantly, guides the people to the proper way to getting in that need to get in there. So I think the first fundamental step is putting up a fence, putting up a wall. I do believe that the border should start with building the wall, but that does not make me a racist.
Right.
Why is it that I give that statement and I'm assumed I'm a racist, or I absolutely love everything Trump has ever done? How do we get back to it's okay to like individual things from a politician without being labeled a 100% lover of them?
Right.
Well, I think more and more people are like that aren't in the political world feel that same way. It's because you don't want to get lumped into one or the other. You're an independent voter, you're a moderate Democrat or a liberal Republican or whatever. And I think most people are feeling that way. You're actually seeing a lot more independence identified in the political process because they're sick of having, if you watch the last debate, I was like, guys, what are we doing right now?
Right.
like you can't talk about what you're talking about and think you're going to get elected anywhere. Decriminalizing the border, free health care for undocumented workers when every other American's out here busting their rear end to pay for health care.
Right.
So even in my own party, I've been trying to take on these, you've got to be in the group, and people got really mad at me when I said that. But then other people were like, thank God somebody said that,
Right.
So we're in that world where you fall in these, it's lazy.
Right.
It's really lazy to just identify somebody in one camp or the other. So I'll tell you what I've been trying to do during this whole campaign is talk about issues where people don't necessarily, they're newer ideas. Keep talking about new and better, not left or right, new and better. So the idea of the electric vehicles, right? And all this building things again in the United States. has the support of 80% of Americans. I think we need to make things, right? We need to manufacture things. So I'm talking about electric vehicles. And then how do you steer that investment to communities that have lost jobs in the last 40 years? Old coal, old steel, old auto, old textile, old rubber. Like those communities got hammered. So have the government have an industrial policy that helps grow those industries and then steers the investment into the communities that have lost. I talk about regenerative agriculture. So moving to regenerative agriculture where you don't till the soil, you actually plant crops in the fall and you never till it. And so you just suck carbon in, put it back in the ground, then you plant your corn and your soy, and then in the fall you plant another. You start to build the soil up and fill it with carbon, which is a huge boost to climate change. Farmers are actually making money if they're doing regenerative agriculture because you don't need all the pesticides. You don't need as much fertilizer.
It's cleaner food.
The food is healthy food. The nutrients in the food now, we've lost so many nutrients to our food. Now you have to eat like 7 carrots to get the equivalent nutrient level of a carrot like 50 years ago.
Wow.
That's how much we've damaged the soil. And so each crop that you plant pulls in certain minerals and develops certain things. And increases the organic matter of the soil. So anyway, long story short, why do I talk about this? It's new, and there are Republican farmers, libertarian farmers who are into regenerative ag, don't even believe that climate change is caused by man. I think it's a natural cycle that's happening, but they're hell-bent on doing regen ag and sequestering carbon to get it in the soil. Now, what do we care why they want to do it, right? So there's a perfect issue where liberals who want clean food and good for the environment and climate change.
And conservatives do too.
Yeah.
They want those things too.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the perception, right?
Right. I get what you're saying. Yep.
And you can almost say they're climate deniers in some sense, right? That's how they'd be labeled. But they're for sequestering carbon. Let's move on that.
Right.
And then they're not even taking, a lot of these guys aren't even taking subsidies. So hundreds of billions of dollars that are now going to the big monopolies, ag monopolies, you can start reducing those subsidies and then reinvest that money back into rural America, build their downtowns, build their infrastructure, clean water, clean the river, do theater renovations, just towns like Warren.
Right.
They're everywhere. I go to Iowa, 99 counties, they're all like Warren. I swear to God, Jimmy, they're like, there's a courthouse, there's an old theater, there's a river, there's, you know.
It all starts on the river.
Yeah, and when there's a lot of empty storefronts. And this town, they used to have a lot of pride. They'd have one factory, you know, that employed enough people to give them a good tax base and pay for the school and all that stuff. So my thing is, how do we do this electric vehicle thing? And everyone gets a little piece of the action. Then you do the batteries. Then you do the charging stations. Now you got the supply chain. Then you do wind. Then you do solar. And everybody can get a little piece of the action. So the regen piece, it's like new idea. Social and emotional learning in the schools, right? Trauma-informed care. If we don't deal with the kids' trauma, you're never going to get their brain in a position to learn because they're in fight or flight mode all the time, right? So my whole education initiative is about trauma-informed care, art therapy, music therapy, play therapy, social and emotional learning. So here's another example. Who supports this? Brookings Institution, liberal think tank, American Enterprise Institute, right-leaning think tank. Both support social and emotional learning because there's an 11 percentile point increase in test scores. So here's my education plan. Like, we could actually do this. Like, we could do regen. We could do manufacturing. We could do this. Now, if that's all we did in my first 4 years, like,
Killer.
Home run. I may drop the mic and walk out, right? I'm coming back to Warren.
Right.
You know?
And you really do bring up other ideas because I remember when they were doing the whole border wall thing, and majority of the Democrats were saying they were using the wall, we're building the wall thing, it shouldn't happen. They were just using fighting words. And I think like you were the only person I saw on TV that you might not have agreed with what Trump was saying, but you were just listing other solutions.
Yeah.
And I think that's like really awesome of you to do because like you're saying, you're speaking of new things. I don't want to hear why you don't agree with the wall. I just want to hear what's your solution on it? I don't want to hear why you don't agree with healthcare. Just tell me your solution. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's
totally.
like so many politicians, I just feel, use the words so that their supporters can say, yeah, I agree. And I agree. And then it's an attack where it should just be, I just want to know about you. What's your plan?
Right.
Because if it bleeds, it leads. And the media then
okay.
tracks that stuff, right? I mean, that's the old newspaper adage. You know, the house is on fire. I don't care who had the matches last.
Right.
I only care who's got the bucket of water.
Right.
Let's put the house out first, and then we can figure out how the fire got started and how we can prevent it and all that other shit.
Yeah.
We're reactionary a lot of times instead of finding solutions. And I'm glad that one of my questions was, Tim, what are all these things that we can agree on? Because that's where we start.
Yeah.
Like, get everybody from different walks of life and different ideological beliefs and different philosophies, find the things that they agree on, and then move them. We had Dennis Malave from the Scrappers. If you haven't been to a game this year, go, because these guys are really hot. But he said, we have these baseball camps, and if we can get these kids to improve 1% each day, now that's not a lot. Like, oh man, 1%?
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can improve 1% in one of those areas, you know, multiple, and move it along, 1% the first year, 1% the next.
Right.
Now we're moving at least in the right direction.
Right. Yeah. And I agree. And I agree 1,000% with that. And to me, so I'll give you another example. So my healthcare deal is, you know, everyone's single payer or this or that. It's like, okay, first of all, you need 60 votes in the Senate. You probably got 30 right now for a single payer bill, right? And I'm on the bill, right? I think we've got to get the universal healthcare. More affordable, accessible, and all the rest. I don't think you should take people's private insurance away. You know, but
should private insurance be like a supplement to what the government provides?
Well, over time, I mean, again, you're talking about changing the trajectory. So build a public option, make it robust, and people can get into it. And at some point, if it's better than private insurance will go away. And if private insurance is better, which I think there's always going to be some private insurance market in the United States. So anyway, my plan is to drop Medicare to 50, right? So a lot of people around here, they lost their job, you know, underemployed, can't get insurance when you're 55 years old. Story of our lives, right? Listening to the
and no
people.
one full-time is going to hire you so you can get that insurance at 55.
Right. And the jobs.
You got 10 more years before you retire. Nobody wants you there.
Well, right. Let's move it out of like the locality too. Let's just move it across the entire world. At 55, you start to have, or 50. I mean, we're all getting, you're in your 40s, I'm in my 40s, Brandon's still in his 30s, he's a pup, whatever. But, you know, he's starting to feel it too.
Yeah.
You don't recover as fast as you did from whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
You start to have increased health problems. So go ahead, take it from there. I got you.
So drop it to 50. You get 60 million people that will be able to buy in, right? So they will have access to affordable health care. And
now, how do they buy in?
They just
through their taxes?
No, they just pay out of pocket.
Okay.
And so what Kaiser Permanente has said, the insurance company, they will save 40%. 60 million Americans will save 40% on average their healthcare costs because they're buying into this bigger pool, right? And you're taking a younger segment and putting them into the older insurance pool.
Who probably aren't going to need it as much as the older people.
Right. So you're actually solidifying the older program. And then you're taking the oldest cohort, 50 to 64, out of the private insurance market. So you're going to drive down cost for everyone else, people that are 49 to 27. And so they're going to save, right? Because you're taking the older, sicker people out.
Makes sense.
And then my plan would let small business people buy in too, because small businesses are getting crushed with healthcare, so they should be able to buy in.
Sure.
So anyway, long story short, it's like, but that doesn't go far enough for some people. Like, I'm talking about 60 million people going into the program, getting a 40% reduction, and it's like, I'm like, that's not revolutionary enough for anybody? Like, that's a huge freaking step. Like, we're talking about 1% a year a day, you know, let's move in that direction. And it's totally revenue neutral. Like, they're paying themselves. You're just getting the best of the private market and the best of the public market.
But you're going to have some of those people say, out there, the detractors will say, and I would agree with this, because everyone wants everything to be equal. Not everything's equal, right? But you'll have people out there say, well, wait a second. That guy that's out there or girl that's out there 100 pounds overweight, shoving sugar in their mouth every day, smoking cigarettes. You know, they're paying the same rate. So my question is there room somewhere for incentivized healthcare? Like, is there room somewhere for them to say, hey, you pay a reduced rate? I mean, they do this in healthcare anyways, right? Like if you go to get health insurance,
Right.
or, you know, death insurance, if you're going to take a thing, okay, hey, you've got these things, you can pay a different rate if you're a smoker, if you're this, or if you're that. How do we incentivize it? And is there room for that to incentivize those people who are not healthy to get healthy, right? Because if we look at the culling of the herd, right, you're going to lop the weak off right away. But that's not what we're made for, right? Like, rising tide lifts all boats. Let's bring those people who are 100 pounds overweight, who smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, who maybe are not educated or maybe are addicted to sugar, because people don't talk about that. Everyone's, you know, they're addicted to sugar. How do we incentivize that to help them, to get them on the right track so we can make the whole nation stronger? I know you talk about this in your books.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's how you do it. I mean, you pay doctors for helping us get and stay healthy. So the system we have now is a disease care system. Wait till you get really sick, and then we dump a bunch of money into it,
Amen.
right?
Yep.
The pharmaceutical companies make a ton of money, the health companies make a bunch of money, and you don't necessarily get sicker or get healthy. So how do we build this new system out? And there's so many ways to do it, but you reward doctors for getting and keeping us healthy. You give patients rebates and refunds for getting and keeping us healthy, getting and staying healthy. And they're starting to build this out. Like UPS, my brother-in-law works for UPS, and it's like if you go to the gym 3 times a week with your Fitbit, you do enough exercising, walking or whatever, you get like $250 a quarter. So it's like $1,000 a year, not insignificant for most people. So how do you start building that system out and then promoting things like food is medicine? So there's all kinds of studies.
Amen, bro.
There's all kinds of studies now about reversing type 2 diabetes. That's the other thing. It's like half the adult population now has either diabetes or pre-diabetes. So that's going to sink the healthcare system. You can talk single payer, this, that, hybrid, whatever you want. It's done. Sunk. If half the country has diabetes. And
I think, I was speaking to my good friend from England, and I could be mistaken, so fact checkers out there, my bad. Because we might have some on this episode.
Yeah, check your facts, people. Go ahead.
But I think he was saying, like, what you were saying, like, how do you, there's like, for decisions that people want to make, they didn't take it away from England, but there's a higher tax on it.
Sure.
So, like, if he
if
goes
you want to smoke, have at it, bro. You're allowed to.
We have some things like that in America, too. But, like, if he goes to a store and he wants to get a Diet Pepsi, it's 99 cents. If he wants to get a Coca-Cola, there's like a 13% tax on it or something like that. So on those kind of things, if he goes to fast food, there's like an additional tax for that.
I don't know if we need to penalize the bad decisions as much as we need to incentivize the better decisions. Like, for example, you know that Coke or whatever it is. I'm not picking on a particular company. Okay?
Yeah.
Coke, if you want to sponsor us, we're here. Okay? But whatever it is, you make that bad decision, you're going to eat that thing. Okay? You're allowed to do it. You don't need to get penalized for it or whatever. But you know that that's going to lead to an insulin spike. It's going to lead to your overweight. And you know that in the end, you're going to pay a higher bracket of healthcare because statistically speaking, if you eat fatty foods and burgers and shove sugar in your mouth and smoke cigarettes, you're going to die sooner than everybody else. And your healthcare costs are going to be way higher than everybody else who's trying to live a healthy lifestyle.
Right. But listen, I don't, I'm trying to quit smoking here shortly, but I am a smoker.
Don't try. Do it. Don't try. Do it.
I am trying to quit smoking.
I know.
But I know that that's not healthy for me.
Yes.
And I have never said, damn you government for putting a higher tax on this. You know what I mean? So if I'm drinking Pepsi and I know that if I drink this 2 liter of cola, we're going to say cola.
There you go.
With sugar compared to non, I'm not going to be pissed off. You want to see the reward, switch over to something that is scientifically healthier, and we'll give you 13% less to buy it.
Yeah.
Instead of getting cigarettes, buy something else that's healthy for you. I know that I can get an energy bar a lot cheaper than, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there are ways that you could do it.
Here's why you need the leadership. I mean, this is not going to just happen.
Right.
You need you know, at the highest levels, you need leadership that talks about these things in a constructive way. And Jimmy mentioned, like, so we can all do better, because it's not like I want you to lose 100 pounds and stop smoking because, you know, I think you're a shameful person.
Right.
I want to do it because, A, you're going to be healthier,
happier.
You're going to live longer. You're going to enjoy your kids and your family.
There you go.
And you're going to be more productive for all of us. So whatever your job is, your company is, whatever, we're all going to be better, new and better. Like, we got to be new and better. And that means everybody comes along with the program. And that's why I love the idea of incentives. There's a great group, Dr. Mark Hyman from the Cleveland Clinic. He runs a program called the Daniel Plan, and it's a program with the guy who wrote.
You're speaking from the Cleveland Clinic.
Cleveland Clinic.
Yep.
Rick Warren wrote Purpose Driven Life. Saddleback Church in California. Anyway, they have a program called the Daniel Plan, where they go into churches and they figure out how to collectively get the church healthy, using, you know, biblical quotes and all that about taking care of your body, and your body's a temple of the Lord and all that stuff. That's small group initiatives done in churches and unions and companies. That's how you're going to do it. So how does the broader plan incentivize that kind of thing? And have a president that says, look, we got to get healthy. 3/4 of our healthcare costs are for chronic diseases that are largely preventable. 3/4, like $3.5 trillion. That's significant money. So as president, I want to say, look, we just talked about regenerative agriculture. How do we reduce subsidies? And farmers actually make money by reducing the tax dollars that go to farmers to grow this or grow that, or not grow this and not grow that, saving a ton of money. How do we get healthy? How do we look at the 3/4 of expenditures that are chronic diseases that are largely preventable and drive those costs down? We have $1 trillion a year deficit. We've got investments we need to make in education and research and infrastructure and rebuild our communities. Where's this money going to come from? Yeah, I'm for taxing rich people too, but I mean, like, okay, I mean, we've got to figure out how to get these systems running better, because we're blowing all kinds of money left and right. And that's where I think, like, Republicans and independents are like, I mean, I know we need to cover everybody with health care, but the system's broken. I mean, I have a lot of rich people say, I don't mind paying more in taxes. I really don't. I make more than I'll ever going to need. But I don't really want to give it to the government that's blowing it on stuff that's not working. Like, so as a reform-minded Democrat, I'd say, look, I want to transform these systems. We got to build new systems out. Then I'm going to ask you for money. And we're going to put it into the new system so that we can implement it. It's almost like a school levy. You know, when you campaign locally for a school levy, you have to go to the people, and the superintendent and the board, they go to the people and they say, here are the reforms we're going to make. We need your help. As opposed to, hey, give us money. We're going to spend it the same way we're spending it now.
We'll figure it out after we get it.
Right. You tell them what's the curriculum change? What's the personnel change? You're going to build a stadium. You're going to build a lab. What are you doing with the money? You got to go out and let them know, here's the reforms we're going to make. Then you ask them for money. I feel like Democrats sometimes are like, just give us the money and don't worry, trust me.
Right. We'll read the bill after we sign it.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a good strategy.
Exactly.
And one of the bigger issues that I have, and I honestly think is the biggest issue, and it's going to really hurt us here in the future here, is student loan debt. You know, with me and my family, we had the interest rates on her loans, on my wife's loans and everything, were so crazy that if they just reduced the amount of interest down to 5 or 6% instead of in the teens, we would have an extra $400 a month. That's an extra $4,800 a year that me and Katie, me and my wife would be investing, spending on products, spending on
whatever it is.
Else.
You can reinvest in that. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
That's just me and my wife.
Yeah.
$4,800 extra dollars in our pocket. Nothing changes with jobs. Nothing changes with anything else. This student loan stuff, like, what do you think about student loans? What kind of solution do you have to these?
Yeah, hold on a second, though.
Okay.
I see where you're going with that. Let me pivot on that question, because it's part of another thing.
Okay.
When you talk about, because here's what the business person is going to say. I'm using air quotes over here. The business-minded person. Hey, man, you took on the loan to get the education. You knew what the rate was. you pay it back like when you buy a car or you buy a house. Now, to your point, they're exorbitant interest rates.
Your house is
in
not
the teens.
15%.
That's my point. So, is there a solution? And is that a government? Is that a local solution, a state solution, or a federal solution to make education more affordable? Does affordable education mean free, Tim Ryan, for president? Do we put free on everything? And this goes back to what you were saying, Brandon, where like, hey, if I'm for a border wall, all of a sudden, and for one of Trump's policies, I'm a racist. Or if I'm for reforming the education, the finance of education, all of a sudden I'm a socialist and I want to give free to everything. What is your solution? I think is the question you're trying to ask.
Yeah, my solution is what you said. I think you allow people who have student loans to renegotiate down the rate, and if the federal government has to be a part of doing that, then I'm okay with the government doing that, because the government set up this. Really, it's a scam where the companies, the banks, loan you the money. If you pay it back, they get the money. If you default on it, the government eats it. So you've socialized the risk and privatized the profit. So it's like a no.
How did that happen?
No lose situation. I mean, this is what the Republicans did back in the day, and when they were in charge. And it's like total giveaway. Like who couldn't make money off of that deal? That's not like free enterprise. That's like,
and that decision that they make when they're 17, you can't even file bankruptcy on it.
And those are the other things you have to factor in. It's like we created a culture in the country of like you have to go to college. Right. Mm-hmm. And so like you're a loser if you don't. And so every parent in the world was saying, OK, I'll co-sign for these loans. I'll take out the loans. My kid's going to college and all the rest. So he can
get a better job.
Right.
So he can have a better work life.
That wasn't necessarily the case. I mean, most 70% of these jobs, you need post high school, which is why I think we've got to move in that direction, because K through 12 is free. Right.
Right.
K through 12 is free for everybody. But that's old economy. New economy is need way more than K through 12. You need at least a year certification or something. You probably need at least 2-year degree. So my thing is, okay, how do we make K through 14
That's awesome. Okay,
free?
right.
So if you're going 4 years, you get the first 2 taken care of, just like an extension of high school. And I think when we think of it that way, it's not like, okay, it's free. It's like, help people who have already gone, reduce the rates, put some money in their pocket, box out the banks, and then for people moving forward, you get a year or 2 for free. We'll build it, maybe in the first 3 years, we extend it K through 13, and then in the next 3 years, it's K through 14, and we try to build that system out, because that's where we're going, and we got to have an educated populace.
Well, you're a great proponent for education. Your wife is a teacher. Mm-hmm. I know that you did some student teaching, I believe, after college.
I was in education. Yeah, I did some coaching, and yes, I did some substitute teaching.
And for those that don't know Tim Ryan as well, and I'll give you my full disclosure statement later on, because obviously I have some bias and I've known you for 30 years. He's an author of the book A Mindful Nation, The Real Food Revolution in Healing America. And so he's real sensitive to education and healthcare. And he knows that healthy bellies and healthy minds are the future that we all can get behind, because we know that that's, again, rising tide lifts all boats. But you brought something up that was interesting about Brandon's question for refinancing loans for student debt and how that happened, how that thing happened. And we had talked about earlier about, the 24-hour news cycles, if it bleeds, it leads. And right now, of course, we've had these massive tragedies in El Paso and in Dayton and in other places that continue to happen. Sometimes it feels like we're not talking about the major root of the problem in these presidential debates, which I feel to some extent is why are we not focusing more on campaign finance reform so we can keep some of these big money companies that stack the deck for the rest of us? How do we keep these companies who are putting major contributions into PACs and into these things and risking our long-term health and our environment? How do we keep them out of politics? And what would you do? How could you lead the charge to change that?
Yeah, I believe in publicly financed elections.
Boom.
I just think that we should move to kind of what they do in Europe. You got like 2 months to make your case. You get help. Everybody run and get some money or airtime. I mean, there's a million different ways to sit down and figure out how you do it. And get the money out. I mean, it's the ultimate corrosion of the system right now is money in politics. And it's corrupted the system, and it's stopped progress. And if anybody wants to read the book Dark Money, it's an amazing account of the Koch brothers and how they started using their mass fortune to build out the right wing, the right wing agenda, both politically, legislatively, and just this long-term plan. And it worked. And then Donald Trump came along and kind of put a populist spin on it. And it's here we are. So, that money has corrupted the system.
So, when we talk about some of that money too, though, a lot of times, so for full disclosure, Tim and I have known each other for a long time. I've worked on his campaigns from the very beginning, from state senate to Congress. And so I'm a little bit biased, but I want to switch some gears here and ask some tougher questions too. I mean, not that these haven't been tough. Okay. But you've been a representative. And so for people out there too, I think sometimes we put political or public office holders up on this massive pedestal as if you're supposed to have all the answers. People are like, Tim, how do we do this? Like, he's a human being. Now, he's a very intelligent human being. He's written a couple books. He's got a lot of experience in Congress, been there since 2002. But you're one of 435 people that represent districts like the 13th all over the country and others. A representative of Congress introduces bills and resolutions. You offer amendments. You serve on different committees. Some of those committees you serve on are pretty. Some of the committees you serve on. Tell us about those real quick.
I sit on the Appropriations Committee, which is one of the top 3 big committees in Congress that funds the government. So any government money that is spent comes through our committee.
And sometimes those committees, I know you also sit on the mental health.
So there are 2 separate committees I sit on, subcommittees of that. One's defense, the other's military construction and veterans. And then I sit on little caucuses that we have on mental health, military mental health, addiction treatment and recovery. I'm the co-chair of that caucus. So very involved around the issues of mental health and addiction.
So you've been really instrumental in helping veterans. You believe in strong national defense. Your position on appropriations, I'm speaking as a member or a constituent of the 13th District, because I think I'm putting this out there because I think people don't know. It's not that they have a misconception. I just think they're not paying attention or they just don't know. I know because we've worked together for the past 20 years, and I'm kind of in the know by default. Not that I'm a smart guy. But you've strengthened things at home through millions of dollars reinvested, $28 million reinvested in the Youngstown Air Reserve Station that you were a big part of, $20 million for Camp Ravenna. I'm just bringing up the veteran stuff, and we can talk about other stuff later, but those are some career high marks for you where you've brought industry money back and dollars back. But those earmarks have been done away with, right? So has that escalated this continuing debt ceiling crisis? Like, some people have suggested that in the past. We're not paying attention on it right now, right? But every so often, it's like, oh, the debt ceiling, and we have these kind of self-created emergencies that I believe lead to people's frustration with government. Oh, we're going to close the parks. Some of the services that the taxpayers pay for, we can't have. So that, I think, creates some of the stress and trauma for people that you've mentioned. And that's caused some of that for those who are informed. We forget it because of Trump's media frenzy and this perpetual frenzy of information, this constant information. Some of it is perpetuated through social media. How do we get some of those dollars back to the district now? Obviously, we're talking about you running for president, but you've got a campaign re-election coming up for the 13th district. How do we get some of that money funneling back to areas like Akron and Youngstown and Warren and Ravenna and Alliance and all those places that you represent.
Yeah. Well, we've been fortunate because I am on the Appropriations Committee, so I've been able to bring back hundreds of millions of dollars for the community. We were able to just get new C-130 planes going to the Air Reserve, the National Air Reserve, and I put the language in the bill and the money, and so we're working real hard to make sure those planes get over here to the 9/10th. And so, the issue for me is, and one of the reasons I'm running for president, is that I would travel to communities across the United States and see that they were in the exact same shape we were in. Their downtown needed redeveloped. And the answers are things we've gotten money for. So you just come in downtown Warren and we got money for the Riverwalk. We got money to put the roof on the amphitheater.
When you say we, define the we.
Tim Ryan for Congress.
Right.
Congressman Tim Ryan got money for the roof on the amphitheater, for the Riverwalk, for the bike trail, for over $2 million for the Packard Car Museum and the Packard Music Hall.
It goes beyond that too. I'm going to jump in. It goes beyond that. You got $20 million for the Kent Central Gateway Transit Center that partners with education and business. So outside of just the Warren Youngstown.
Sure,
area.
absolutely. I mean, if you go to downtown Warren or you go to downtown Kent, we got $20 million to start that whole initiative that transformed downtown Kent. And that led to about another $100 million in other public and private investment. And downtown Kent used to be nothing. And now it's been completely transformed. And it was because of that original grant that we brought back. And we've got, I think, $20 or $30 million for grants for downtown Akron to do the whole promenade project down there. And if you're downtown Akron, you can see all of the developments that are happening there now. So downtown Youngstown, same kind of thing. I mean, we're involved in the hotel project down there with the new market tax credits and all of these things. America Makes, literally, hundreds of millions of dollars around additive manufacturing and 3D printing, where Youngstown is now the center in the country for 3D printing and additive manufacturing, because that's the future. So what I'm doing for president is basically taking what we've done here, technology, new economy, quality of life, Riverwalk, entertainment, downtown redevelopment, downtown housing, and how do we do that nationally so that the federal government is playing a role. I get the best response in Iowa when I talk about renovating theaters and downtowns. Because I tell them the story of our first Palm card. I say ours because Jimmy helped with the campaign, but the first Tim Ryan for State Senate Palm card said on it, renovate the Robbins Theater.
Right. It was we just had Marvin on 2 episodes ago talking about it. Right.
So did I have anything to do with Marvin coming in? No, not really.
But you've been a huge proponent and supporter.
My office is here.
Seed money. He brought you up, actually, too. So,
my office is underneath this building. The energy incubator, $2+ million right here. A cutting edge incubator doing business with 80 companies around the state.
Sure.
Right here in downtown Warren. And it's in downtown Warren because I wanted it in downtown Warren. I could have got that put anywhere, but I wanted it here because I wanted it to be a catalyst for what else was going to happen, and the Riverwalk and the amphitheater. And I just say this so people can see my vision for what a modern community looks like. It has the quality of life, it has the entertainment, but it has the technology and the new economy businesses that are going to percolate out. And then Marvin comes in and does the theater. So. But he wasn't going to do that if he didn't think there was stuff going on downtown.
There's always catalysts that start the ripple.
So that's the middle of the road stuff. That's okay, government, do your freaking job, right? Be smart, be innovative, be a catalyzer. And then the private sector will come in with their money and take it to the next level. And that's what's starting to happen. And that's what happened in Kent. That's what happened in Akron. That's what's happening now in Warren.
So unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are misinformed, and you see these people on social media. And I know Brandon and I were talking about this ahead of time. He had a really kind of an interesting spin on that, which we talked about.
Oh, no, absolutely. So now, I'm sure you see it too. When I'm on social media and stuff like that, a lot of posts on social media, either from news sources or from your campaign making an announcement.
Everybody can post their grievance on social media, and get validated by other people jumping on. Oh, you're right.
And I see underneath the comments, though, a lot of people criticizing you, many saying you haven't passed any meaningful legislation in your time in Congress, or that you haven't done, anything for your district when we've had massive job loss. Obviously you see them, the majority of them are Trump supporters. You're not going to really turn around them in a sense. You know what I mean? Like but there are some people that say, I am a lifetime Democrat. I voted for Tim Ryan before, but they're no longer in your camp. So why do you think that is, and how do you, or even can you, win them back?
No idea. I mean, try to get the message out. I mean, I bust my rear end. I mean, I work really, really hard. We've brought back a lot of money. I mean, you look at the TJX project, for example, 1,000 jobs. Now, I was right in the middle of that. We almost lost that project. I was on the phone, had to be 20 times within a week or two with the CEO of TJX. I was calling people who were council people in the village for an hour. I went and sat in someone's kitchen for 2 hours trying to put this whole thing together.
And this is before you announced that you were president.
This was way before.
You were doing your job.
I was doing my job, and it was I didn't call a press conference and say, hey, I just walked out of this guy's kitchen in Lordstown. I was here for 2 hours, right. Look at me, I'm doing my job. But it worked out, and there's going to be 1,000 new jobs coming. We send out press releases, we do press, but we don't no one would know how, you want to go through it? $2 million here, right here in the square for the energy incubator, right? Probably $4 to $5 million between the Packard Music Hall, Packard Car Museum, Riverwalk Bike Trail, Kinsman House. We got money for the Kinsman House to get renovated. I put the roof on the amphitheater.
Not personally, but you.
I brought money back. Yeah, right.
He brought the ladder.
He had a nail.
You don't want me doing that kind of labor. Trust me. And so we've brought that money back, and I say we because it's me, it's my staff, it's the community. It's not. Yeah, I got the money.
It's other officials you work with.
The local officials. The same. It's the same. Now, can I stop the shifts in the global economy? No, I can't. Can I keep Lordstown here? No, I can't. But I can try to help.
Not from a lack of desire, though.
No, I mean, why wouldn't I?
Right, but it's funny because people will try to vilify, and not just you, but they'll vilify elected officials and go, this guy didn't do, what
Trump
happened?
should have did more.
Well, yeah.
Tim Ryan should have did
whoever
more.
it was, yeah. GM closed, it's this dude's fault. Oh,
GM has the right to leave. They left.
Well, and I think it's probably, we have to shine some light, and we have to take some responsibility, too. One is voters. Okay, if you're not voting, shame on you. Keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
But we have to take some responsibility in how we. This is not a knock on your greatness, sir. On how we put people up on a pedestal and expect them to be the savior solely by themselves.
Yeah.
Like Tim Ryan is not saving RG Steel. He's not. It's not going to take one person.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like. It takes a village to raise a kid. It's the same thing.
And look, I'm a big boy. I know.
How do you deal with that social media flood?
Yeah, I don't read it.
Yeah, good stuff.
Because it's poison for your mind. It's like, okay, I know I'm doing the best I can, and I'm gonna I grew up in Niles. I live in Howland. My wife is from Struthers. Our kids go to school in Howland. It's like, why wouldn't I do everything I possibly could to save Lordstown or to save a steel mill?
Right.
Of course I would. And so if you want to take the time, which most people don't, they'd rather just throw a shot at you.
Right.
But if you want to take the time to look at the money for the additive America Makes in downtown Youngstown, if you want to look at the money I brought back for the business incubator, if you want to look at the energy incubator, go talk to Rick at the energy incubator.
And not even just the money, the ideas and supporting the ideas that you've had.
Right. And the research money for Youngstown, because I want us to move into the next phase of the economy, not just move into it, but lead it. And that's what we're doing. We have the most cutting edge additive manufacturing institute in the country is in Youngstown, not by accident. And so I was spearheading all of this in the last 17 years. And I think we're doing okay. But part of why I'm running for president is because we don't have earmarks. And these are structural problems that we have to fix. And that means that the federal government has to play a catalytic and leadership role in this stuff. And what the right-wing machine has denigrated collective action around government so effectively that no one thinks if government can do anything. And then the government is broke, and so everyone says, hey, look, it's broke, it can't do anything. And what I'm saying is we better reform this sucker and get it to work, because how's it been working out for the average person with the government so weak? It was like we built the greatest middle class ever. I mean, you go to some of these old school buildings and they have WPA projects of art projects and music projects and building projects where we were building stuff. Where's the public swimming pools anymore, right? Like, why can't kids have a public pool in the summer?
Quality of life issues.
Right. Like, why aren't we building our downtowns? It's like, it's a small amount of money. We're not talking, but then you have a place to go, and community is built, and you have activity and energy and pride. And so I want the government to be on the cutting edge.
For the future.
For the future, for
Newer
our kids.
and better.
For our kids, new and better.
And the thing is the future is growing so quick.
Right.
Well,
I mean, we better get on the stick.
Part of it, too, is that, we talk about these things like clarity of message. And so I want to ask this question. I know Tim's got a next appointment here. Appreciate the time that you've spent with us today. Some of it is people that are just not informed. Mm-hmm. Some of it's clarity of message. I know recently, in the wake of the recent shootings, you suspended your presidential campaign. Many people asked me, because there was confusion as to what that means. Are you taking a break, or is that announcement indefinite?
Yeah, we're back. Went to Iowa on Friday. We were in South Carolina. We're back. I suspended it to come home. To go to Dayton.
Yeah.
And it's like a family member dies. You just stop what you're doing. You go home. And I just felt like, I'm the only Ohio person running for president. This is a huge issue in Ohio. I should be in Ohio with Mayor Whaley, who's a friend of mine, and so I wanted to be there. And I just think the whole country's so afraid of everything going on. We need action on this stuff, and to just watch the Mitch McConnell and Trump slow walk this stuff. It was very frustrating. So we were right back on the trail, after on Friday and this weekend.
I know you've always had an altruistic spirit. I've known you for 20 plus years. You've been rated one of the most bipartisan members of Congress by Georgetown University. You've always been a person that come together. I always tell people, people go like, fuck Tim Ryan. I go, whoa. I go, wait a second. Right? Yeah. They don't say that around me too often.
Tim Ryan.
Yeah,
but they didn't even say it in a song.
But they'll say it more, they'll say it more. And I'll say, you know what? If you sit down with the guy for 5 minutes, you'll not only will you walk away better informed, but I bet you end up liking that guy, because you're able to bring people from varied backgrounds with different ideologies and different philosophies together. You've always had this altruistic spirit. Real quickly, if you weren't in public office, what would you be doing?
Probably teaching and coaching. I'm a little probably past going back and coaching high school football at this point, but getting these messages out around food, around education, finding a platform at some point in my career to continue to amplify those things, whether it's in the private sector, whether it's in media, maybe do the podcast with you here, Jimmy.
Amen. Well, I definitely want to have you on again, because I want to talk about the books. I know you got some great stuff for the books, but this was a great place to talk about your presidential candidacy and also potentially your re-election campaign for Congress. Let's get past this other stuff first. I know that you have to go. You're giving me the high sign, which
gotta go.
Listen, I know you have a thankless job. I want to personally thank you, not only as a friend, but also as a constituent of the 13th District, as a United States citizen, for doing the stuff that you do. I love you. Keep doing it.
Appreciate it.
Forget about the haters out there, man, and all that other stuff.
I don't let them in my mind.
Let's stay positive. There's probably some things that would surprise Tim Ryan that we'll ask those questions maybe in another podcast. Until the next time, ladies and gents, where can people find out about you, Tim? And
TimRyanForAmerica.com. Go there, send me $10. Help the campaign out. We talk often about Warren and Youngstown and
Ravenna and Kent and Akron.
Yeah, we talk all the time about these communities. So it's great. It's a lot of fun to kind of talk about what we're doing and trying to unite the country.
Brother, we appreciate you coming on here today on the ProdCast. Keep doing what you're doing. Until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay electrified and keep on prodding. Ladies and gentlemen, listeners, lovers, and friends, here's a little post recap after episode 24 with Congressman Tim Ryan, now presidential candidate Tim Ryan. I want to reiterate how thankful Brandon and I are that he came on the show. I want to say this because we ran out of time a little bit. Tim actually had to do an interview with the Washington Post. Our interview went a little long. He was gracious enough to give us a little extra time. This show could have been much, much longer because we both had a lot of questions. He has a thankless job. It's a job where if you're in public office, you are always kind of criticized and you're always going to have kind of some detractors or some enemies and things of that nature. And I want to thank Brandon personally and professionally for having really great engagement and some great questions today.
Appreciate that, man.
Yeah, so thank you, Brandon Giovanni, MDI Studios, your solutions for websites. Of course, when you see this episode posted, number 24, on theprodcast.net, that's him posting that stuff and manning our website, which he's done an excellent job with.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We're going to talk about Two Ticks real quick.
Well, Two Ticks in the Dog Productions. I wanted to say this too. I know I said it in the show a little bit. Obviously, there are biases. I've been involved with Tim really from the very beginning. Tim Ryan for State Senate, commercials 1 through 3 were the very first television commercials that I ever produced.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I want to say this, though. We didn't cover this in the show because a lot of times, and we've done, I don't even know how many campaigns now. We're probably getting close to 70 campaigns now. Two Ticks and the Dog has political campaigns that we've consulted on or I've consulted on professionally. And so the one thing that you see that happens in politics is, unfortunately, because what we talked about earlier, we lift these people up on a pedestal and expect them to have all the answers and whatever. And, we refer to them as like the honorable so-and-so.
Right.
We invite them to speak at our high school graduations or our college graduations or the Key Club or, whatever groups that we have. We really kind of boost them up. And sometimes that's a dangerous thing because we indirectly, we don't mean to do this. This is partly our responsibility, or it's partly our fault, for lack of better terms, that we create an echo chamber. Or, sometimes these candidates and sometimes these public office holders don't hear the challenging sides of the debate. They get surrounded by yes men or yes women, sycophants who boost them up and say how great they are and how wonderful they are and all this other stuff. And sometimes it's hard to actively seek out those who have an opposite opinion to level the playing field, to kind of balance what they're thinking on. Tim has always been one who has sought out, hey, what do you think about this?
Right.
We don't always agree on stuff. I am biased. I want to say this. I am biased, and I'm his friend, and we're friends. But I hope we presented this ProdCast as non-yes men. I really think we asked them some tougher questions.
It just came natural to you. I mean, I've heard you talk about Tim before. I've known you've been a great part of his campaigns, and I know you went to school and everything together. But what's nice about your guys' relationship is I guess probably it hasn't changed much. Just like my buddies, I have some opinions that I like of theirs, and I don't. We kind of butt heads at times. We ultimately have a great time. But even when he got announced that he was president, like you said, before this broadcast, there's things I want to know. I haven't had a chance to ask Tim, and I'm going to ask him.
Yeah.
It's not, we didn't use this. You didn't want to use this as an opportunity to say, Tim, whatever you want me to do, we're going to do for this podcast. And I think that's awesome because I believe it did come across that way. And I hope the Prodders out there feel the same way.
Yeah, and I know we had some tougher questions to ask. We didn't cover all of them. I'm glad we covered some of the clarity of message and his ideas on incentivized healthcare. I love that you brought up the college loans. He led the charge to kind of pass meaningful gun legislation. We didn't get a chance to ask him about that. Part of that is background checks. And so, we didn't get to ask some of those things, like what does meaningful gun legislation look like?
Right.
Because, people say, well, we already have background checks. Why do we need more background checks? Or why do we need a license? Of course, some people will say, well, because, you need a license to drive a car. We're not really.
There wasn't even cars back then.
Well, that's just it, And it was interesting. He brought up like the preamble and some of the verbiage that was written into the Constitution and how we were at that particular time in history. We had a unified enemy, which was the King of England.
Right.
And now, obviously, we're friends with the English in the Brits, man. And
right.
So we have to find what our unified enemy is. And might not be a person, and it might not be another government. Right. It may be poverty, the things that he brought up, poverty, or people who can't feed themselves, or dirty water is a unified enemy.
Right, and I just think that there's so many things out there that are just they really are common sense. Like at the end of the day, when cars first came out, you could be 10 years old driving them. They realized that they became more technology and things of that nature. Then they became new laws. Had nothing to do with the Constitution. It was just, this is what's happening, so let's make some new laws to not take away the cars, but just to make it safer and put a car into the right hands. You know what I mean?
And you get people that'll say, like, if we have this kind of deeper gun legislation or bigger background checks or more thorough background checks, that's an infringement on the Second Amendment, or that this is the beginning for the collection of guns, that we need to fight this tyrannical government. We don't want to have tyrannical government control. So people are like, oh, we got to have these guns. I love how you put it in terms of, the immigration thing. I thought that was very smart of you to say, just because I support a wall or I support better border security. Right. I loved your analogy of, you going into a stadium and you have a fence around it. And more importantly, you have ports of entry, the gate where people are collecting tickets, and those people, have earned the right to be there, belong there. Just because you support a wall doesn't mean I'm in full support of whoever's in support of that wall. Specifically, people will say Trump, and people are going, well, Trump's a racist. So if you voted for Trump, that doesn't make you a racist.
Right, it doesn't.
Okay, like these things are not mutually exclusive.
If you voted for Obama, doesn't mean that you don't like cops. I mean, whatever it may be. Like, you know what I mean? It's, if I didn't vote for Obama, does not mean that I don't want health care for people. Right. And I just hope in 2020 we can go ahead and just talk about.
Let's have some let's get back to civility.
Yeah.
Well, I liked how Tim had said, and this is something that we've talked about with Joe Schiavone and some other guests, like, we need to take a break, man. Like, take a time out. Everybody go to their corner, the neutral corner.
Right.
And breathe, and let's get back in the middle. And instead of fighting, let's sit down. And instead of it being a war, let's make it a game of chess that involves people being able to express their ideas. The other side or sides can express their ideas, and then finding common ground on those issues that we all agree on. And if we just focus on solving those issues, the solutions to those issues, man, we can move the ball kind of forward down the field.
I like what Tim was saying about how, when we asked that question about how you avoiding this and that, and he said he talks about new ideas. And I think that is really important, because every single year there's like a new formation of technology that you must have. Like, I feel bad for people that, like, you need a cell phone to get an Uber in Cleveland. You cannot whistle down anybody anymore. Like, that's where we're at now. Like,
the world's changed.
Right. The old sayings, cash is king. I still got a home phone. You were not far behind. You are literally not part of how the world has changed.
Yeah, we're evolving. And this was a question too, like, voting turnout is very, very low. There is, right now, The Economist, we didn't get to talk about this, but there was an Economist poll that came out about Congress's approval rating. And I wanted to, there's a 70% disapproval. Only 13% of the country approves of what Congress is doing. And 17% of them, they don't know. They're not thinking about it. But 70% disapproval rating. We talked about this before the show. If your business, if NB, or if Two Ticks, if 70% of the people who hired us didn't like and weren't satisfied with what we did, we wouldn't have jobs. We wouldn't be able to feed our families. So how do we shift that? And is it the question is it incumbent upon us to maybe have a more realistic approach of what Congress could and should be doing? Is it part of it like we as a society need a little bit of an attitude adjustment? And is it all, and that might be part of it. And is the other thing coupled up with how do we reform campaign finance? And do we set things like we didn't get to talk about term limits because, things of that we ran out of time. But I did want to ask him about using technology, like because voter turnout is low and you have to go to the polls, and most people who vote are older. Some of them are infirmed. If you're older, you have a higher propensity to be infirmed or to be able to you might not get a ride. You might not,
Right.
Voter turnout when the weather's bad is lower. Can we use technology to vote? Obviously there's issues of, cyber interference and things of that, but we're moving in that direction. And I was curious to hear his take. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of get him back and ask him those questions.
Well, you're a technology guy. What do you think?
Well, there's got to be a way to do it. I mean, there's data breaches. Recently there was a Capital One data breach. There's data breaches all the time. Oh, they got into your Chase account. They got into your, this bank or that bank. There's safeguards on that too, though. There's got to be a way where we don't necessarily physically. Now, obviously, people can say, well, you can mail it in. Yeah, you can do that too. But is there a way to do it that gets everybody involved? If voter turnout's only 30%, we're doing something wrong because it seems like more than 30% of the people are out there complaining or they have an opinion on something. Like, they have an opinion on this candidate or this policy or that policy, but are they voting? I know a great amount of people who have an opinion and are free to express their opinion on social media, but if you ask them in private, I haven't voted in the last couple elections. Well, then...
And I think people think that
why?
It takes a long time. Like the technology that is there, honestly, I think when the 2016 election, I stood in line for about 3 minutes. Took me about 3 minutes to 6 minutes, and that was it. And I did my civil responsibility. That's what I'm supposed to do, And I just don't see where technology, like if you do it from home, because like you never know, like who could be forcing somebody to vote, or you can,
that's true too. That's true. Yeah.
I don't even think we've got the current election system set up correctly. Like
not
using
when
photo
you have 20 or 30% turnout.
It's just I think just need to make it. Maybe bring a DJ or something, while you wait or something.
Make it fun. Well, what's kind of funny is like they did.
Bring a juggling act. Why not? I'm not even trying to be funny. Like bring a show.
I did just go to a new church recently, and they were serving cold brew coffee, and they were talking about the Bible in a different. I'm Catholic, so I was brought up in a very Catholicism is very stoic, and it's very set, kneel, stand. No, it's very, Renee says, it's sometimes it's kind of sad, it's kind of bland. And they brought this coffee in and they had like, more music that's more in the now than, these old hymns and whatnot. And it was really interesting. It made it kind of an interesting experience. So that's probably an idea that could be.
I'm not even trying to be funny, but like
voting should be explored so that we can get everybody involved. Everybody who's supposed to be involved.
Right.
I don't believe illegal aliens or people who are here that aren't citizens of the United States, they should not vote. But we should make the path to citizenship. If they're here, they're paying their taxes, and they're a contributing member of society, we should be able to somehow integrate them into just like our ancestors, were able to do that who came here.
Right.
I did miss also a question where I wanted to ask him, I know he works with a lot of other elected officials. Like, how do we what are some of his visions for the 13th specifically, and how do we make that more a reality? But we did get to cover, Tim's always had like this very altruistic spirit. We did get to talk about like his public office. What would he do if he wasn't in public office? He mentioned being a teacher, and I know we missed a question that you had.
Yeah, like and Jim, you could probably speak about this. Is I like where the ProdCast went and everything. And what's nice is that he said he wants to do this again. So this is not the last time we'll hear from Tim Ryan on here. But I think we need to dive in a little bit more, and I wish we could have had a little more time to just find out Tim the man. And I know maybe you can speak to the listeners out there because you have known him for 20 years. You were kind of, in a sense, neighbors, went through the same school system in college. But like there's those career politician type things that people say out there, but like, are you aware? Like, what are just some of the jobs that he had before, becoming into the public office?
Well, that was a great question. I wanted him to be able to kind of speak on that because, people are like, oh, you're sitting up here in this castle. This is what people think. You're sitting up here in this castle. You're so far removed. How do you know what it's like to work hard? You never held a real job. So some of the jobs that I know he did. I know he worked in the food service industry, bus tables. He waited tables. I know he taught. He mentioned he was in education and he coached and did some of those things before public office. Of course, he graduated with a law degree. He never. I don't believe, to my knowledge, practice law, but I know when he speaks about working in the mill and things of that nature, and he's talking about other people, he worked in those jobs too.
Right.
I know that he worked some summer jobs in the mill, sweating, and so he understands some of those things that those people are going through.
Right.
And so it's important, I think, people to know that. And I wish we would have dove in a little bit more about the man. I certainly hope he comes back because I really would like to. Obviously, we wanted to focus on the presidential campaign and his upcoming reelection to Congress if the presidential thing doesn't go as planned. We didn't.
Were we the first one to get that announcement that his campaign was back on?
Well, I don't know. I'm glad we asked about that clarity of message because it certainly is important. And I want to hear what the clarity of message is moving forward in the 13th district. I mean, he prefaced it with, some of the projects that he's worked on. But I want to say this real quick. I actually want to kind of read something that were notes that I took upon a meeting with Tim. It was a whole group of us, but these were some of the things that he had talked about, and I kind of put it into and this isn't from him. This is the information is from him, and the sentiment is from him. This isn't a Tim Ryan for Congress campaign commercial, but it's just questions, that he asked at this meeting. There was about 50 of us in the room because we all had a lot of questions.
Right.
I didn't get to ask hey, when did you make that final decision to run? Because he's risking, which he knew. This is something that I brought up as well as other. He knew the backlash potentially locally that it would have for those people that are like, what the hell is he doing? For the district, he's out there running for president.
Right.
He knew that there was a risk in taking, but he was so passionate about changing the narrative for the country, and he felt that he could do that by running. And I think, he's done it because he's shined some light. He's been on the stage a couple times, but he asked these questions, and the first one was maybe it can be us. He asked why can't it be us who changed the world?
Right.
And that's a question. It's a big, broad thing. It's kind of a Nike slogan, if you will. It's not necessarily, but why can't it be us? Yeah. Why can't it be us? Maybe it can be us who changed the world. We can agree on our need for clean water and energy and affordable health care and future forward education, and not just jobs, but purpose for ourselves and for our country and for the world.
Right.
We should be the leaders of that direction. There is a path to that, but we have to be brave enough to seek it, and we have to be willing to take our lumps in order to get there. And some of that path is through nuclear and natural gas and carbon capture, like he was talking about, and investment into new technology for water and clean farming and incentivization for healthcare, like he had talked about, so that those who invest in their own well-being are rewarded, and those that need a little help are encouraged to seek it through and for our nation's strength and unity collectively. Mm-hmm. Rising tide lifts all boats, right? So just because the guy's out of shape, or we need to bring everybody up. Just because he's uneducated, we need to educate that person.
Absolutely.
Just like the people who need clean food to fuel our bodies, power should come from clean sources. Let's make sure we develop that responsibly. And education for all. You had brought a great point up about financing and maybe refinancing for education, post-secondary, post-high school education.
Right.
We need education for all. And we need social and emotional and arts integrated learning. And I know that's something that Tim stands for, and obviously you can read his books. Because we talked about this, healthy bellies and healthy minds, that's the future. Yeah. That's the future we can all should get behind.
Right.
So why can't it be us? The workers, the business people, from every race, every background, every orientation. Why can't it be us who sit at the table? Both the blue collar and the blue bloods, all at the celebration of the American dream. Because after all, we are all of us, every single one of us, we are all red-blooded Americans.
That's right.
Why can't it be us who change the world?
Right.
And it's all right to dream.
Oh, yeah.
Like, let's dream. Let's just dream a little bit bigger.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's the campaign that Tim stands for. I think those are the premises that he stands on and for. And I hope you guys got that, listeners out there. And forget about point and blame. Let's worry about the solution. People go like, oh, hey, we need to change this. Oh, well, so-and-so or this party or that party did this or did that. Hey, man, I'll say it again. The house is on fire. I don't care who had the matches last. I only care how we put the fire out. Let's be looking for the pail of water and not who had the gasoline and the other stuff. We can deal with all that stuff after we find the solution, because in the meantime, the house is burning down. Let's stop the fire first. Listeners out there, I want to thank, again, Brandon from MDI Studios. He mentioned, the website and the website work that he does. And of course, Two Ticks and the Dog Productions. And we team up a lot of times on projects for our business clients. And of course, we teamed up on this. And we want to pass this message out there that if you like this episode, please share it. Please like, listen, share, and subscribe through social media, through your phone, through wherever, the ProdCast, so we can keep this thing going. We hope you were educated. We hope you were electrified. And
Jim, you're already saying thank yous. I want to thank you, dude. Where this is episode number 24. It literally started off with him giving me a phone call and just testing out the equipment turned into, I think I might have, you want to co-host or something? And dude, in the past, we started in February, in the past like 5 or 6 months, dude, you've really opened up my eyes to a greater, broader amount of different types of people out there. So I really appreciate you not hesitating, bringing me on. We worked out some kinks in the beginning. You found a role for me. You didn't say, never mind, dude. There was never a moment with that. And now we're here at number 24. We've got a couple more episodes to end season 1 in a sense. We'll come back with season 2. I'm looking forward to it. And I just appreciate this opportunity, man.
You're welcome, man. I appreciate you saying that. And, we certainly didn't have this addendum to Tim's to boost ourselves up.
Right,
but yeah, we're both passionate about the community and the world we live in, and I think that's the reason why we have this podcast, and that's the reason why we both agreed to sponsor it, MDI Studios and Two Ticks and the Dog Productions. So until the next time, make sure you check out theprodcast.net. Make sure you check out the ProdCast on every major podcast app, and listen, subscribe, and share. Until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay electrified and keep on prodding. We appreciate you.